This episode has been divided into 3 shorter episodes that will come out over the next few weeks. The focus is Kenya's protests, mainly initiated by Gen Z, in itself a development which gives some hope when compared to recent youth gatherings in the UK and Germany, where younger generations entertain themselves in singing Nazi marching songs or simply rejoicing at expelling foreigners. My guest is Kenya artist, activist and philosopher Omish Njash. The episodes will be split according to his tracks presented here in short demo versions. Omish has a cunning turn of phrase, which if you switch off for a moment, you will inevitably miss a significant point. Thank you, Omish, for finding time in the upheaval of your hometown to come and speak with me. I wish you and all of Kenya all the best for the coming weeks, months and years. 2 on a mic, clocking out. Enjoy.
Dung weche pek kod welo mabiro etu under mic. Dung parodit kod jok mawuoye etu under mic. Seche tin sud buta wawinji etu under mic. Wola wachokre wabed piny biwawinje ero chako moment ndi and a podcast makende.
I'm joined from Kenya by the artist Omish Njash for a 5th time, by the way, Omish. Can you believe it?
Really?
Yeah.
I haven't been counting.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what my my folder tells me, that this is our 5th chat, but I'm extremely happy. I'm happy to have another 55 chats, to be honest. But yeah, it's great to have you. But this session has not been without its complications. So first of all, how are you? And secondly, what complications have we had?
Well, I'm quite well. And where the complications are concerned, right now we are going through a small revolution in Nairobi. So I don't know at what point on a scale of 1 to 10 a revolution registers as a complication. But yeah, we've been having a very interesting moment in time when I think in one of my earlier messages to you, I said we are attempting to discipline an unruly president.
You know, what's really funny is that I wrote this down as a place for us to start because I just absolutely love this response. Because I asked you what's going on, and that's exactly what you said, and I think that's fantastic. But can you give us a bit of background then? So, why has your unruly president decided to be quite as unruly as he has been?
Personally, I would say it's greed. Yeah. Personally, I would say it's greed. I'd say that we are operating with a limited pool of national resources. And I believe that his agenda, essentially, there's been a lot of runaway corruption, and the corruption has not been dealt with. But he's dealing with his financial needs as a leader, the financial needs of the government. He's placing them squarely upon our pockets in terms of increasing the tax, while doing absolutely nothing to recover the billions of Kenya shillings lost to corruption to his cronies and his contemporaries. Their salaries are already quite obscene. The salaries of critical civil servants like teachers and doctors are a problem. There's just 1,000 decisions that seem to all have been made in a way that puts the legislators and the elected leaders at the center of the priorities rather than the people. And I suppose where we believe that he was becoming unruly was where this thing was supposed to happen to us by force, and we were supposed to swallow it, whether we liked it or not. That's where it became unruly, And I'm actually quite surprised that it was the youngest generation that, had the most fire, because honestly speaking, I think I was describing it to someone else earlier today, that the younger generation have yanked the country out of a state of political apathy that the country had fallen into after the last election, the election that brought William Ruto into power. It was, for most people, it was a very disappointing result, his becoming president. And I think it sent a lot of people into apathy, into a state of not being interested. And I think even worse is that after that election, the country's political opposition was completely disintegrated. So he pretty much had a majority in terms of legislators, and he pretty much has, and I think that's partly the reason why he's so bullish about this, is because he knows he doesn't have a viable political opposition. I guess he wasn't anticipating that the opposition would rise from the grassroots the way it did. He was thinking that because the political opposition is weakened, he can force through any policy that he wishes. So yeah, that's the unruliness that we were attempting to correct. And the results are complicated, but we will talk about that as we go along.
Yeah, I mean, it's been reported as well in the news that, and the BBC headline reads, Kenyan president's humbling shows power of African youth. And that's pretty much in line with what you said with regards to Gen Z stepping up. I also saw some interesting social media clips of a couple of young gentlemen in the speaker's chair, and they wanted to send quite a clear message to the speaker too. So, I mean, as you say, it's
the more amusing clip was of them raiding the parliament cafeteria and gorging themselves on the rice in the buffet. I wish we had that. I wish we had those shots.
I've not seen those, but I mean, it's interesting how, in many ways, my view of what was happening in Nairobi was completely different to my view of what happened in Washington on January 6th. So what I saw happening in Washington was just a group of thugs, right-wing sort of anarchists, who simply wanted to tear down, I suppose, democratic institutions. Whereas in Nairobi, I don't know, I didn't get that same sense. I got the sense that this was a very large, motivated group of people who actually wanted to make a stand exactly for democracy. And they were saying, basically, come and do what you're supposed to do.
Maybe I can help you make the distinction by saying it like this. Yeah?
Yeah.
I would say that what happened in Washington was a coup that was supposed to be disguised as what happened in Nairobi. So what happened in Washington was supposed to be a coup, but it was supposed to be disguised as a genuine people's insurrection. This was a genuine people's insurrection without the end goal of a coup in mind at all. Yeah. I'm not sure what would have happened if the protesters would have found the president, somehow. Maybe a coup would have happened, but I do not think that the people that rose that morning intended specifically to to overturn the government. They intended to reject a policy. That's a very different thing from what was happening in Washington. In Washington, there was an attempt to take over a political institution and even cause harm to legislators. I think this was more about the decision that was being made rather than about making some sort of point about power and might. Maybe it was also about making a point about power and might, just not in the same ultra-violent, gun-toting man. I don't know, it's... yeah, one was the people being manipulated, the other one was the people attempting to not be manipulated. It's kind of sad they appear to look the same, but I guess that's the dicey thing about politics and power, isn't it?
Definitely. But I mean, as I said, for me, straight away, I had a very different feeling about the scenes that I saw in Nairobi. I didn't see this attempt to take over, as you exactly say yourself. This was a very large group of young people making a political point
against a policy and against a certain manner of leadership. Yeah. Not so much about destroying and tearing the whole edifice down. Although, to be absolutely honest, the edifice needs some consideration, because personally I believe that the problem we are facing right now, its root is the fact that our democratic elections have become untrustworthy, and the results that come out of our democratic elections aren't always the will of the people. William Ruto, as a president, I'll tell you this, the last few presidential victories in this country have not been sure. They have not been victories that had the people's trust in the process. In fact, several of them have been hugely contentious. So this particular president, I think he might have forgotten that his election itself was something of a bit of a shock to many of the people that he's now attempting to overtax. I think he might have overestimated his approval or popularity simply because of the apathy I mentioned earlier. But yeah, this younger generation just managed to make it that nobody was able to ignore what the government was doing this time. And yeah, I suppose that's one other huge difference you could point out between the insurrection in Washington and this one, is that this one was led by the youth, and that one was something that was led, it seemed to me that it was mostly populated by military type people, veterans of various armed forces, and in general, people, much older people with a very strong conservative leaning. This one, on the other hand, was an unarmed movement of a massive group of extremely young people who were trying to, as they say, make it make sense, you know?
And a key word that you used before was that in trying to make it make sense, they rejected essentially the president's budget. And this kind of brings us back around to
a finance bill. It was a finance. It had it wasn't a budget, but it was a bill that proposed various changes to how the subject of collecting to what is taxed and how much is taxed in the country. And honestly speaking, it was so extreme as to be punitive for no reason. Yeah. And remember that when I say punitive, I'm talking about a president whose candidature was dicey. So the person that's least supposed to be punishing anybody, let alone the electorate that gave him a surprising victory. So yeah, it was, honestly speaking, it also comes at a time when the economy has been struggling. Personally, I would describe myself right now in terms of my art as a fugitive from debt and depression. So, not exactly the best person to attempt to tax even more. Sure. Everybody was already on the edge. This was spontaneous things are interesting. You don't expect them, but they don't surprise you. Sure. This was like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And there we kind of combine two things which bring us essentially to what the first of three parts that we wanted to cover. So you, being the artist that you are, being inspired by the events that we saw that have unfolded this week, you yourself put together one of the three tracks that we're going to play excerpts from. And the first one is called Reject. Do you want to talk a bit about that?
Yeah. It's interesting because we had spoken and you had asked me how Kenyan artists are reacting to this particular political moment. And at that point, I would say that I was gathering myself artistically to do something. But then almost as if, karma was listening, I found myself invited by a younger artist, actually a member of the mythical and now very much revered Gen Z. So he was doing a track aptly titled Reject, and he invited me to lay a verse. He did the first verse and the hook, and then myself and a contemporary known as Word Baba were his collaborators on this. So this particular song is directly about this particular moment and this particular finance bill that's being rejected by everyone. And in my verse, I try also to speak about what has led up to this, and I actually attempt to give congratulations and thanks to the youth for, how would I say, for their inspiration, of the nation and of the world in a small way. Yeah, so I don't know. Let's play it and you guys can be the judge.
Please correct me if I'm wrong. But the younger artist you referred to, his name is Wanjao.
And then the second artist who collaborated on the track is known as Word Baba.
Okay, wonderful. So I will add their names also to the podcast notes and any links that you may send. So yeah, but first of all, let's listen to the song Reject.
Gen Z. Yeah. Unajua nimekuwa nikifikiria about the previous generations as the fighting humanity, kufight corruption. Yeah. But new generations after Maumozi inherit fear of the soldiers, fear of the system. But we ain't scared no more. We might be wrong, much old perception, cause the life has been teaching me a lot. Thank you for all the lessons, told you that we his vessel. God, najoko na sisi, rest in peace to my side, even Kirato. This ain't a coalition, this a restitution. I hope you see the vision. Go on, yata tujali, cause we ain't got no role models. We don't care if we're wrong. We ain't got no role models. We don't care if we're wrong. Yeah. Kuna siku youth itaungana, siku buda ni leo, tumeacha kuzozana. Kuna siku youth itainuka, tunainuka sahi, tunateka na kutakana, tunawacha confused. Hadi karana shindo ni chaningane umefanya. Na tuna reject finance bill, tumeigenya. Tuandamane ndo tuweze kuangamiza hii disease. Tuandamane ndo tuweze kuangamiza, so buda tuandamane ndo tunachukia for free. Tuandamane ndo tuweze kuangamiza, so buda tuandamane ndo tunachukia for free. Tuandamane ndo tuweze kuangamiza, so buda tuandamane ndo tunachukia for free. Tuandamane ndo tuweze kuangamiza, so buda tuandamane ndo tunachukia for free. tukue hater from my head to my toe. Kimama tuko njaa, wana tax vitu zote hadi melody na flow. Incredible as though, are the credible for flows. You wanna tax hadi pass na hizo maringo. Wanavyotuonyesha ni kama sino no. Bodies in this Kenya tumefightiwa for. But the previous generations from before, did a Kimathi standing in his grave. Immaculate for sure. Jobon zake hata zilitoka from Ukami his widow. Hadi zikapanda ndege wa Kenya tumezoea. Wamezoea kututoka tena waseme tunawatoka ni nani lituroga. Situko na wakisina wakamba si tunaweza roka back. But isi kabila ni time ya kuja pamoja with ourselves tuangamize wanaotaka kutuangamiza. Didn't think I would see siku wa Kenya wataka pamoja. Goja, tunawasho vioja. Mahakama tuogopi jela tumelala sana. Tunawasho vioja. Tunawasho vioja. Kuna siku youth itaungana, siku buda ni leo tumeacha kuzozana. Kuna siku youth itainuka, tunainuka sahi tunataka na kutakana, tunawacha confused. Hadi karana shindoni tena ngano imefanya. Na tuna reject finance bill tumeigenya. Tuandamane ndo tuweze kuangamiza hii disease. Tuandamane ndo tuweze kuangamiza. So buda tuandamane ndo tunachukia for free. Tuandamane ndo tuweze kuangamiza. So buda tuandamane ndo tunachukia for free. Tuandamane ndo tuweze kuangamiza. So buda tuandamane ndo tunachukia for free. Tuandamane ndo tuweze kuangamiza. So buda tuandamane ndo tunachukia for free.
United we'll stand, one was strong. Reject the bill cause we know and wrong. Gen Z will rise, our hearts on fire. For justice, equality, I swear aspire. You watch a gunny, every child, better got get sanded. The financial burden and a heavy weight. Crushing on dreams, Poco better got the fate. Every MPig, man of votes, yes I hate. Fuck you, and fuck you again. The other day I was paying 20 mic on a plane. In my amoga order, cause to bring a fight. Government to read the man, give my team the tight. As a Kenyan, I know in my Kenyan, right in this Kenyan street, we can shout out loud, reject. The financial bill, reject the financial bill.
Kuna siku youth itaungana, siku buda ni leo tumeacha kuzozana. Kuna siku youth itainuka, tunainuka sahi tunataka na kutakana, tunawacha confused.
A common theme I think people will also hear in this and the other songs as well. You do mention the term corruption quite a bit. It does play a certain role. So obviously, as you say, events kind of inspired in many ways the music. And I recently spoke with somebody else who is a different kind of artist, and she said to me that art is politics, or at least an expression, a political expression. In this case, it's directly a political voice with which you sing.
Yes. I would say, I wouldn't say art is always political expression, but I would say honest art is always political expression. And art that avoids all political expression is therefore dishonest at times, at least sometimes, So that's what I would say. I would say that if it's honest, if it expresses true feelings, it cannot avoid being political. And it will be political even without intending to be. In a country where achieving artistic success is difficult, making a song about imaginary artistic success is political. In a country where you're supposed to be miserable, making a song about your joy is political. I mean, take, for example, just the concept right now in the world of Palestinian joy. It's radical. Not because Palestinians are not supposed to smile and laugh, but because there is a force against that. The image of a happy Palestinian is political right now, not because Palestinian joy is inherently political, but because a political circumstance makes it so. So any art that is honest inevitably touches politics.
And mic.